Hey, it's Don Williams here with today's episode of the Proven Entrepreneur Show. I have a real treat, a super nice lady all the way from Australia. So, like down under, Linh Padetti. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Don, for having me.
It's my distinct pleasure. So, we know each other through Entrepreneurs Organization. And I don't know if we met in Slack or WhatsApp, but we met in some social media channel. And in our very first conversation, we kind of hit it off. And so I'm so thrilled that you're here today. Let's dive right in. Tell me about your company. Take a couple minutes and tell me about your company, Outsourcing Angel. What do you do? Who do you do it with? Why do you do it?
Yeah. So Outsourcing Angel, we started off as an outsourcing company where we recruit virtual assistants from the Philippines for businesses. But nowadays we see ourselves as more of someone that helps businesses to scale their operations so that the business can run without them. So we do that through automation, systemizing, and of course still hiring amazing, reliable staff, affordable staff from the Philippines.
Yeah, awesome. And how long have you had your business, Lynn?
It feels like a long time, over a decade, because what happened is, you start off running like a marketing agency, then you pivot it into like a recruitment model, and it officially was launched. Outsourcing Angel was launched in 2015, but it feels like it was before that, right? Because often you come up with the final idea, after you've been doing a similar model before. So I always say the registered business is 2010, and so it's been over 10 years.
I love that. And I'm still waiting for my final idea after
Yeah.
37 years as an entrepreneur. I'm, I'd be happy to see a final idea. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for that. And if you're looking for help to scale your business and automation or exceptional, highly qualified, affordable help, please reach out to Outsourcing Angel and Lynn. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in here. I'm going to take you all the way back to little Lynn. So you're
Mhm.
5 years old up to 18 years old. You're living in your childhood home, however that looked, and different people have different looks for that. But tell me, was there an adult in your childhood home that was an entrepreneur, that set an entrepreneurial example for you?
Yeah, not at all. So I was born and raised in Vietnam, and so I, lived firsthand experience in a developing country. We didn't have much at all. My parents went to work, but yeah, I remember we were still going to the toilet in a little hole, and showering we didn't have a shower. It was just like a little bowl, and so that was the kind of life that I lived. And then we moved to Australia, and look, I would say they're not. My parents were self-employed people. They worked from home, sewing, because that's the only thing that they knew of. So when they moved over, a lot of the Vietnamese people were having sewing machine jobs at home. So they would buy machines and they turn their garage or their spare room into an operation. I didn't think of it as an entrepreneurship journey for my parents back then. It was a job that they created for themselves, and it was a very hard job. They worked from about 7 or 8 a.m. till about midnight. It's because they work from home, so they could just work as hard as they can to be able to build a new life in Australia back in 1992. So I've been in Australia for about 30 years now.
Awesome. And, technically they were solopreneurs.
Mm.
And so a little, entrepreneurship takes so many different paths. There's the solopreneur and, then there's the entrepreneur that ends up building $1 billion company and just about everything in between. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm guessing that because your parents were such hardworking individuals that they instilled a great work ethic in you.
Yeah, yeah. It's also something that was forced upon me. So at the age of 10, I got so curious. It felt like it was they were doing arts and craft at home, doing some sewing here and there. And so I was like, can I help you? And they're like, sure. So they got me to cut some tags, and then I was cutting so good that they're like, why don't you learn to sew the tag onto the garment? And then they started slowly teaching me how to do the actual sewing. And guess what? In about a year's time, I end up being their first employee. And so from the age of probably 10, 11, I was basically working after school, weekends and everything up until I was a teenager. And I ended up running away because I was like, so stressed out being a kid and having, being forced to work. But yeah, definitely looking back, I was like, you really instilled in me resilience, hard work, and just that stop hustle.
Yeah, yeah, love that. Okay, so after your schoolgirl years, okay, so you're 18. Did you go to university? Did you backpack across Europe? Did you join the Merchant Marines? What'd you do?
Oh, I had a really interesting life. So I ended up dating a bad guy. So basically, I had a really tough time growing up with my parents, feeling like, oh my God, you're just making me work. So I ended up going on the wrong path, and I ended up, dating, bad guys. And one of that guy happens to be on drugs and, really, really bad. I ended up running away from home. And at the age of 19, I got pregnant and I ended up having a kid at the age of 20. And so that was my youth. And now I have a son that is about 20, and I was so excited for him when he graduated, or when he finished year 12. And I was like, yay, you finished. And now, you're a grown man. You can do whatever you want. In a sense, I was excited for him, like the opportunities, like traveling, doing all that. And then it just hit me. I was like, oh my God, when I was your age, I ended up having a kid. And I was like, he even said to me, I don't know what you were thinking, mum. So, like, as much as he's grateful to be alive on this earth and here right now with me, he was still, he felt sorry for me. I don't know. He doesn't know what I was doing at that time.
Well, it's interesting. I interviewed a guest not too long ago, and she shared a story about she was a mother at 16, and that was not her parents' plan for her life, nor really her plan for her life. And but after the mic went off, we talked about it a little bit, and I was like, out of all the people that have been born since the beginning of time, okay, out of all the people that have been born, you do realize that most of them were born to teenage parents, right?
Mm.
And so while, there are sometimes some societal pressures, the reality is most of us were born. My mother was 18, my father was, or 19, and my father was 20. And
Yeah.
so there are hormones in youth. We know that. Yeah. So okay. So had your son, and turned out that that's been a complete blessing. And so you got a job. You started a company at 20. What's the story? What'd you do?
Yeah, so like I said, I didn't really have any entrepreneur examples, or I wasn't. I mean, I aspired to work in a business when I was a kid. I remember, when we're role playing, I was like pretending I'm holding a little suitcase, and I always knew that I wanted to be in business, but I really had no idea what owning a business is, or I didn't even know the word entrepreneurship. I remember in year 10 or 11 when I heard the word, I said to my accounting teacher, what is entrepreneurship? And then it sounded like a big word. And so I still finished uni. So I finished year 12, had a baby. I only took 6 months off, really. Finished uni, did 4 years of international business, graduated with a distinction. I was so proud. I said, oh my God, I graduated with a baby and a distinction. Not just a pass. And so I got myself a graduate job at a defense company. So they build defense ships. It was a very stable job. It was amazing at the first year because I had a really great manager who really guided me. And I think I am the leader that I am today because of her. I was so green. I didn't know anything about work life, but she just took that time out to like guide me. But she was very unique. She was one of those managers that were authentic, spoke her, she was just so real. She would share with me about her personal life. She would have Friday parties. We're the only department that really celebrated. And she just taught me how to be vulnerable and being real. She wasn't like trying to pretend she's this corporate boss and only talk about work. And so I always tell her till this day, it's like, I am who I am because of you. I just realized that you can be a manager, a leader, but you can actually just be this goofy, boss that you want to. And so, but after she left, I experienced that typical corporate life. It was like, crap, be a manager, didn't really care about you, promised you that, when this person leaves and you get to do all these jobs that she was doing and you're going to get better pay. But then the pay didn't come because there's no budget for it. And then I watched all these people around me complaining about their jobs and they're there for like 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. I'm like, oh my God, I do not want to be like them, sitting here complaining and still here. And I'm barely really contributing much to the company at this time, meaning like I would do my basic, and yet people were complimenting me. My managers were like, oh, you're really good. And I'm like, this is good? You call me this good? And so I realized that even if I could hide in the company and get paid doing nothing, I wasn't doing myself justice. I wasn't growing, and then the company wasn't really getting the best out of me either. And so I explored entrepreneurship while I was at work. A friend of mine gave me some bottles of nail polish to try, and the gullible me going, oh, how much is this product? And it's like $1. I said, oh, I think I'm gonna become a millionaire if I could just get 1 million girls, which we've got billions of people in this world. If only 1 million bought this nail polish and I just made $1 out of it, I'm gonna be a millionaire. And so I was just super ignorant and gullible, and then I started that business. And look, it didn't turn out that way, but it gave me that stepping stone into business.
Well, and it's interesting. So many times people that are not entrepreneurs, people that are in the States, we would call W-2s, they are working for someone. They have it in their head that failing is the opposite of success.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say financial success, because there's certainly better successes than money. But um, but truthfully, failing, as long as you're failing forward, is an inherent part of success. You can't really win if you don't lose sometime. And so, but it's easier for an old guy to look back and say that than it is for
Yes.
somebody, going through that the first time. So,
Yeah.
so your first entrepreneurial journey, you thought you were going to be Maybelline or L'Oreal and sell cosmetics to 1 million people, make $1 a bottle. Um, when uh, when was the first time you started a company that had some legs? That
Yeah.
things did work out at least some of the time. And I think that's another misconception people have about entrepreneurship, is they think, oh, their life is really easy and everything works perfectly all of the time. And you're like, no, not really. If we're winning 51% of the time or better, hey, it's good. And if we're losing 51% of the time, it's bad.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So it was thanks to starting this nail polish business that I learned how to do marketing for that business. I mean, I didn't personally do it, but I learned that I needed SEO, I needed Google Ads, and I had no idea about it. And so I hired people. First, I even hired Australian people to build me the website, only to be actually ripped off by an Australian company when they built me a website and then said, no, you don't own this. We still own this. If you need to pay us to continue to work on it. And so with limited funding, I had to look for other solutions. And that's when I stumbled across offshore, resources. And so it was called Odes at the time. And so, yeah, in between, so I quit my job. I decided to go all into this nail polish business, even though I wasn't making that money. I was one of those type of people that said, always ask these kind of really logical questions. Like, if I'm spending 40 hours at work, how am I going to make this business work? Let's do it. And I jumped off. And, while I was starting this nail polish business, I realized how depressed I was. It was like, oh my God, why didn't anyone ask me what business do I like, or what's the passion? Because I didn't have any mentors at the time or any entrepreneur sample examples. So I remember just dreading waking up just as much as I was going to work, and I hated it. And so I would end up going to networking events. I even created my own networking opportunities for people. So it was a site called Meetup at the time. And I even built a community of business startup zero capital. So, hey, who's here want to start a business with no money? Let's get together. And so I built it based on, hey, I'm going to facilitate this and just gather, and anyone else have any ideas to share, they can share. So it wasn't about me. It was really about the community. And so, once in a while, I would explain some of the marketing things I'm doing for my nail polish business. And surprisingly, when I finished talking, some of these members said to me, hey, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I have this nail polish business, And then at the time, I think I was learning life coaching as well, thinking maybe I want to be a life coach. I'm still exploring. And they're like, oh, how do you do that? How do you do your marketing here and there? And so they too were starting out having some businesses of their own. And I was giving away information. Oh, you do it like this, or you hire people over here. And they're like, oh, really? How do you do that? And to me, it just sounded simple, but to them, it was, no, I don't have time for that. Can I pay you? And that was when I made my first real money. So it was me going, oh my God, they want to pay me to go and get these marketing people to do their work, which is something that I've done for myself. All right, sure. I would go and find someone for $600 and just said, I'll do it for $1,000. I made barely anything. Realized that I spent hours doing the website, but it was, wasn't paid well. But that was when I realized business is about problem solving. It's really about tuning in to going, what is it that this person need? Maybe I already got the skill set that can deliver this, and then actually going for it rather than having to think of some fancy ideas, some unique ideas. And that was when I started the marketing agency after having several clients and like, oh, I really need to actually set up a business name now. Oh, I really need a business card. And so I did it in reverse. Whereas my first business of the nail polish, guess what? I spent $30,000 on just setup, buying nail polish, creating trademarks, creating logos. And so I always tell people it's like, just make the money first and worry about all that marketing later.
I have for years been a big fan of go sell it and then build it. It just, because I know a lot of people who have built really expensive, really ornate, really complex systems, and nobody bought them. And so
Yeah.
it's just easier in my mind to sell it than go build it. Okay. Yep. I love that. So I want you to think back across your career. I want you to look for a hard moment. So something happened that was like, man, this hurts. But maybe today, after some perspective and, looking at it in retrospect, you can say, that actually was pretty positive for me, but at the time it hurt. Do you have a hard moment? Do you have something you could share with us?
Yeah. Would you like to hear more like a personal story or business?
Let's do one of each. We got time.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've just gone through so much challenges growing up, as I said. And I think, having the kid at a very young age at that time, I think that was the biggest learning lesson for me. It's one of those decisions you make that you have to live with for the rest of your life. I remember my mum going like, do you know you're having a baby? Like, it's a baby. It's like, so she obviously wanted me to have an abortion, knowing that my future was going to be very hard. And I was like, yeah, I really just saw it as like, yeah, why not? It's like buying something, and then being able to return it again. And so I would say that having a child so young really has made me grow up so quick. And if it wasn't for having a child in my early 20s, I wouldn't have known what it's like to have to juggle work and kids and that whole life. And so I see a lot of friends nowadays in their 30s feeling that, going, oh my God, like I'm torn between working and having to be with my children. And so in my early 20s, I had a few years working in a corporate job, and I was like, there's no flexibility. I have no time for my son. I have to drop him off before care, after care. And that was the motivation for me wanting to start something. It wasn't that I just wanted to be an entrepreneur to be cool. It was like a necessity, because I had to really pretend I'm sick or pretend I'm this just to be there for my son. And so if it wasn't for being a mum, I wouldn't have that necessity to start a business so that I have my freedom. And then I end up looking for a freedom business. I've tried many different things, from doing blogging, doing, selling products or whatever else. Whatever it is, I needed a freedom business. And so what I'm proud about Outsourcing Angel right now is it's completely remote. It's a freedom business. And why I built it that way is that I also want all my virtual assistants from the Philippines or any of my staff who are from Australia to also have that freedom. I didn't build a business so that I could put it in a corporate box and just so that I could make money and can control what they're doing every day. I wanted to create that same freedom for my team. And likewise, I have a lot of compassion for business owners. I myself feel like the next last thing I want is you building a business that becomes this self-employed job like my parents did. There was no teams, there was no structure, and you're stuck in it. And so my goal for Outsourcing Angel is to free up the business owners as well so they can travel and be there with their family. So I think that's really profound.
I love that. And I think there's some, truths in there. You were kind of in a corner. You were a very young mother, and I don't think anything makes young people grow up like having a baby. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's just no substitute for the maturity that causes. And knew that you needed a freedom business, and you said, "Hey, I tried a lot of things. So many times, I think people try one thing and it doesn't work, and odds are it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Your first business." It's highly likely that you're not good at it. The first time you paint a picture, highly likely you're not good at it. The first time you record a video, highly likely that you're not good at it. But, we know as entrepreneurs that start ugly, start where you're at, start with what you have. Okay. And the more you do it, the better you'll get.
Mm-hmm.
Shocking. So, okay. So that was a great personal. Did you have a business hard moment too?
Yeah. So this one kind of started off as a personal thing, but it turned out into a business achievement actually. So I had a girlfriend that I met 5, 6 years ago, and I was so excited about meeting this girl. She was so like me, another single mom. Well, I wasn't a single mom anymore at that time, but another single mom, lived nearby, Vietnamese, and was just like amazing. And I saw her as like my sister, my best friend. And a year down the track, basically, I realized she was a dud. Like she just used me, or it wasn't a really good friendship. But let's just say I was torn. It was like breaking up with a boyfriend. I was like thinking about when did it break up? When did I not see the signs? All that stuff. And oh my god, I just love this person so much, and how come it wasn't like that? But the funniest thing was during the time that I was friends with her, she introduced me to someone. She said, "Hey, I bumped into this guy at a networking place, and he does something similar to you. He works with virtual assistants, and he also helps business owners to free themselves up. At that time." And I was like, even hesitated wanting to meet him because I'm like, it's just sounded like a competitor, right? Why should I even meet this guy? But no, me being curious, one of those type that just loves to like, oh, what's out there? And so I ended up having a coffee with this guy, and nothing really happened out of it. But a year or 2 years later, when he came back from Singapore, he came back to me looking for a job, and he has been the best investment for the business because the reason why he was so perfect for us is because he has skills in virtual assistant, because he knew how to help clients with the same thing that I was helping, and because he's tried to be an entrepreneur himself. So the reason why between the coffee date and me meeting him later is that he went out trying to be an entrepreneur for himself, and he went to Singapore and tried the travel nomad kind of living style, and then also started his own marketing agency. So he has firsthand experience of what it's like running his own company. And now he's coming back going, I'm done. I don't want to do entrepreneurship anymore. I'm actually looking for a great company to work with. And I want to feel like I could still have freedom and flexibility, but I'm ready to just commit myself because I'm done with entrepreneurship. And so here I am faced with this opportunity. To me, it wasn't a dilemma. It was almost like, too good to be true. It's presented at me, and I end up hiring him. He was my operations manager. Now he's grown to be my managing director. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here claiming that I'm semi-retired, because really, truly, he came in and said, I just want to help you to be able to become obsolete and that we don't need you in the business anymore. I'm like, what? I didn't even know I needed that for myself. And so that is the biggest blessing. And that biggest heartbreak, personal heartbreak of a friendship turned out into be a blessing in business for me.
I think there's some real truths there. One, for several years now, I've operated under this. I never turn down a meeting. If somebody
Mm.
wants to meet with me, I meet with them. And, I kiss some frogs. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not really sure what I was doing there, but you don't have to stay all day. And every once in a while there's a princess. You're like, wow, this was really a good meeting. And then I had a vice president of operations that until he retired, he was with me almost 30 years. And um, he was exceptionally highly skilled. And I asked him once, I was like, Michael, why don't you have your own company? And I loved his answer. His answer was, uneasy lies the head of the king. And I want to do good work, but I
Mm.
don't want to have to worry about it. And
Mm.
so there are those people out there that fit very good with people like you and me, and
Yeah.
our paths have different skills, and we're better together. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Ah, perfect match made in heaven.
yes, so love that. Um, okay, so what about a, a golden nugget of wisdom? So something that you know that if I could look inside your brain at all the nuggets you have, I'd be like, oh, Lynn, share this one with our audience today. What would that be?
I would say that habits means everything, habits has really helped me to not just achieve the different successes in different areas of life. It's really helped me to become a consistently happy person. And I think, we hear habits, and even when we're young as kids, we hear habit, but we don't understand the power of it. What makes life worth living is when you have amazing habits that build on that. And so, I would say the last few years, I just really focus and hone into building my habits. And I think that as an entrepreneur or as a mom or as anybody, we really need to think about what do we want in life, and how do we build these daily habits? Because, growing up, and I guess everyone, we always want shortcuts. We always want, oh, just give me a pill and so I can drink it and I'm just going to be skinny. Give me a hack so that then I could just become an entrepreneur and be rich tomorrow. But it's in the daily habits that actually will ever make you succeed sustainably, right? And so I would say that if I didn't start building a habit of waking up early, 3 a.m., and have that time for myself to really work on my life, I just have so much time to reflect, to think about all the achievements I've done and look at the challenges, and didn't realize that I am like 10 times smarter in the morning, then I wouldn't be able to grow the business that I have today. And I wouldn't say it's the biggest size or has the biggest team or biggest revenue, but it's created the best lifestyle for me. And I'm able to design it because I have more time, or just building habits around, health, exercise, and all that, um, has really helped me to have the energy to love my business, to give back to my communities, or to give back to my family. It's like, I travel a lot, but it also takes a lot of time to plan all that, and so you need to have a really great habit around all the different areas. And so I would say that's my biggest wisdom to anybody. I tell my son that as well about habits, and he had all these limiting beliefs that said, oh no, I'm to this, I'm to that. And luckily I sent him to UPW for Tony Robbins just this weekend, and he was able to understand limiting beliefs. And then now he's excited to work on, his new habits around health and fitness and whatever else, and he's open to reading as well. And so I'm very excited about that.
I love that. And so it's not my quote. I'm not sure who said it, but that we continually overestimate what we can get done in the short term and underestimate what we can get done in the long term. And that boils down to those habits. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't gain 100 pounds all at one time, you gain it one bite at a time, and you take it off,
Exactly.
an ounce at a time. And that's just how that works. And
Yeah.
on self-limiting beliefs, which I think everybody suffers from time to time. But a great question to ask yourself is this really true, or is this a story my brain
Mm-hmm.
is telling myself? And if you'll just ask yourself that question, many times you'll be like, why does my brain tell me those things?
Yeah.
You know, because that's really what's happening. Okay, so toughest question of the interview. I'm preparing you. Toughest question of the interview. I'm going to put you in a time machine, and I'm going to send you all the way back to 20-year-old Lynn. And you're going to get a minute, maybe two, to tell Lynn something you know now you wish you knew then that would have helped you along your path. So
Yeah.
into the time machine you go, all the way back. Here's
Hmm.
20-year-old Lynn. What do
Yeah.
you have to say?
I would say God loves you. At that time, I didn't know there was a God. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel loved by my parents. I didn't feel loved by the world. I felt like everything was just crumbling. And I also felt then for the next many years, I was trying to control and try to fix my life and try to be better. But I was, and I was looking at the wrong places and it's only when I surrendered, and that was at the age of 26 or 27, when I gave up and said, oh my God, help me, and that was when I felt that there was a universe or a God out there, when things just started to happen, when I basically kind of humbled myself and said, you know what, I don't know everything and I do need help. I'm not this cocky teenager anymore, or this mum that, fine, I don't, you're bad to me, I'm going to date someone else, or mum, I'll show you I'm going to be successful for you. And it was just a lot of ego, a lot of pride, a lot of arrogance. And it wasn't until I humbled myself and said, you know what, I need help. And I surrendered to whatever was out there. And I said, and then, it wasn't only until 3 years ago did I find Jesus. And it's taken me to this new life of spirituality and understanding that all the lessons has always been in there. When God says, help others, or treat each other like the way you want to be treated, or you never can outgive the universe or outgive God. It's all there. And I wish I had that roadmap to follow, so I wouldn't have stressed so much. And I was so worried about my future. I didn't know what to do because I didn't have a philosophy. I didn't have a framework to work with. Now when I go to church and I see these young people there, I'm like, wow, how are you here? Like at 15, I was clueless, or I thought I knew the world, and you're here. I am so happy for you, and so I just would have told Lynn to humble yourself, ask for help, surrender. And I don't know, I wish that maybe I bumped into someone that would introduce me to God earlier. But that's why I suffered for a few more years after that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so, my own journey, I was raised in a house of faith. But then at about 15, I turned my back on what I believed for, I don't know, 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so a life is a long journey. And, there are many turns and dips in the road. And so thank you for sharing that. So, Lynn, how could we, as the Proven Entrepreneur Tribe, how could we support you? What could we do for you?
Well, yeah, come and connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm everywhere on social media. I would love to meet more amazing people out there. And, at my company, Outsourcing Angel, we're always here to help if you know anyone that are stuck inside their business, feeling trapped, and, what they desire is freedom, and they're not having the freedom that they want right now. So would love to chat to them as well. But other than that, one of my mission is to just continue to help those in need. So at Outsourcing Angel, we donate 10% of our profit to our charity partners. So sometimes people are wondering, how do I help people and know that the money actually goes to the people in need? Well, we have that opportunity at Outsourcing Angel. If you go there, there is a charity project that we do. These people are actually volunteers. They're not actually, organizations, charity organizations. They're just passionate volunteers that go out there and go to those communities directly. And so any money we give them, $200, $500, anything, it literally goes straight to them, and we do immediate projects. So for example, we notice that they are lacking water, we'll go and help with the water, or right now the typhoon just hit, then we would go and do that kind of project. And so yeah, that's really meaningful to me. It's not just about business. I think it's like, how else can we do to help others?
I love that. I love that. Okay. Any final thoughts?
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm really appreciative of this EO organization that we're part of. I encourage anyone who's listening to really check it out. Like, I really underestimated the power of it. I hesitated to join, and I not only have made friends within EO Sydney and Australia, but like people like yourself in the US. And the best part is, if I ever visit your country, I know that you'll welcome me with open arms. And likewise, I can't wait for you to come and visit me in Sydney so that I could take you around as well.
I'm looking forward to it. Lynn, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. You're a delight, as always. And that's today's episode of the Proven Entrepreneur Show. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.